When the community sees that what you're doing is essentially a replication of an idea that's already been done, the community can be harsh.
Rogue Games put the call out to find their next big game, and indie developers around the world answered. There are 5 different categories and 5 chances to win. But before they can get the glory, they'll have to impress Rogue's hand-picked industry heavyweights, aka our judges.
Don't settle for anything less than creative excellence. It's easy, right?
Who will take their idea to the next level and go rogue? It's anyone's game.
I was personally really distracted by the art style that I couldn't quite get into the game.
Today is arguably the most important award yet, the Audience Choice Award. That's right, we asked the fans what they thought was the best game of Rogue Jam, and the winner will take home $50,000.
The winner for the Rogue Jam Audience Choice Award and $50,000 is...
This is Rogue Jam. Welcome to Rogue Jam, the intense competition show that brings together the biggest indie games of tomorrow and lets them battle for the chance to win huge cash prizes and a publishing deal with Rogue Games. Today we're going to find out which of our feature games wins the Audience Choice Award and $50,000. But first, let's meet our judges. First up, when she's not judging indie games on Rogue Jam, Kimberly Porter-Corbat acts as Senior VP of Digital Publishing for WB Games. You might have seen Reggie Fils-Aimé on a Nintendo Direct or 20. He was president of Nintendo of America for over a decade before he retired so he could appear on more game shows. IGN wouldn't exist if Per Schneider didn't co-found it over 25 years ago and has continued to grow since then, with him acting as Executive Vice President and Chief Content Officer. Co-founder of IGN, Matt Casamassina built Apple's App Store games editorial team before finally going rogue as the CEO for Rogue Games. After working on games like Halo, Age of Empires, and Need for Speed, and co-founding In Mass Entertainment, Christopher Lee is now the GM for Xbox's publisher strategy and marketing team. And finally, as Chief Strategy Officer for Rogue Games, Chris Archer plots crazy schemes like, say, having the internet vote on which game they should publish next. Well, more video games are being released than ever before, and with such stiff competition, it's an uphill battle to not only sell a game, but to get gamers' attention in the first place. Matt, what are some challenges in attracting an audience, and how can smaller games make themselves stand out?
Tons of noise out there for sure. For me, what I've noticed is that you got to build a social community with your game. And so take the gamers on the journey with you, and that means being on Twitter, being on Discord, being on Twitch, and just really being connected with your audience.
Reggie, while you're at Nintendo, you oversaw the launch of consoles and games that appealed to players who otherwise wouldn't consider themselves gamers. How do you reach a wider audience?
You know, what we found, the key to reaching that wider audience is being clear in how the game is relevant for them, right? They needed to be able to see themselves playing Brain Age. They needed to see themselves playing Style Savvy, all of these different games that grew the audience. So you had to make it relevant to that particular player.
All right, well, let's get things started and see who's up for the Audience Choice category, brought to you by AWS Game Tech. Let the games begin.
I considered applying for game dev jobs, but I really realized quickly that creating my own games was my true passion. Worlds of the Future, it's an action adventure game. Being able to land on planets with no loading screens at all, going on adventures with your crew.
I made a game to propose to Inish, and I liked it so much that we're making a game together now. The name of our game is
Beers and Boomerangs. You have to multitask between cooking for your friends, while you have to survive against Australian animals that are trying to ruin your barbecue.
The name of our game is Die For Us. It is a 4-player cooperative zombie game heavily focused on teamwork.
Playing a good game gives me the ability to live in the moment. The game is called Misplaced. The story of Misplaced is about a hero who finds themselves in a world that they don't belong to.
Growing up, I really wanted to write my own stories. The name of our game is By a Space Station. It's all about hacking, slashing, and pulverizing hordes of creatures in this 1 to 4 player co-op third-person action game.
I could spend hours playing games. The name of the game is I'm Not Jelly. The type of combat is hack and slash with roguelike missions.
The name of our game is Biogun. Biogun, you play as Beck, the vaccine. We'll go inside of this guy and look everywhere for the Doper virus in order to save him
and dogkind from extinction.
The name of my game is Cold Fortune. I set out to try to make a game that felt like a movie you were playing.
I love creating worlds and the creativity involved in making games. And I get inspired constantly seeing and playing all these super creative indie games.
I just really want all the players to have fun, as much fun playing it as I have making it and playing it.
Our hope for when the players finally get their hands on the game is that they laugh at the game, they scream in anger at the kangaroos, and in general, they just have a blast.
As a gamer myself, I saw the potential in how games can reach a lot of people.
All right, well, sadly, not every game you just saw will make it to our finalist round, but that doesn't mean they don't hold a special place in our hearts. Let's profile another Rogue standout presented by Galaxy Racer. Matt, why don't you tell us about a game that deserves a moment in the spotlight?
Yeah, Moolander is a real interesting one. This could have been in the WTF category. I think it actually was, so it's great to see it come back here. This is a game that's a Metroidvania where you basically are aliens flying around and interacting with cows the whole time. It's insane. There's a 4-player mode where you can play with one another, and the artistry is great. It looks amazing, so I'm really psyched to see it back here.
Well, I'm sure the audience will be utterly disappointed that Moolander didn't make the finals. Hope they don't start a beef. Now, before we check out the 3 games that scored highest with our audience, we're actually going to shake things up a little bit. Matt?
Sure, this being the Audience Choice Award, we really wanted to remove the rogue factor entirely. So Archer and I are going to recuse ourselves from this one and let the other judges take it away. Please pick a good one, guys.
Well, this is very exciting. We'll take a look at our first finalist right after this. Welcome back to Rogue Jam. We're about to give $50,000 to one lucky team of developers based on how you, our audience, voted. Now, Matt and Chris Archer have recused themselves and left the voting obligations to our 4 remaining judges. The audience has selected their top picks in the category, and it's up to Reggie, Kimberly, Chris, and Pear to decide on a winner from the top 3. Up next, they'll be chatting with the developers behind them, and after that, it's just a matter of comparing notes and picking one winner. First up, here's a closer look at I'm Not Jelly. I mean, that's the name of the game. I'm actually extremely envious that they were picked and I wasn't. The Damie game was robbed.
My name is Karina Lomelí. I'm a video game producer at One Simple Game. We are located in Guadalajara, Mexico. I'm Not Jelly is a roguelike action game. What we are trying to do with I'm Not Jelly is for you to choose a character which you can battle with. You can upgrade its abilities. You can actually enter different missions, which will never be the same one. And well, at the end of the mission, you get resources which you can use to get even more characters, and of course upgrade their abilities. And you have several different bosses to fight. Before joining the industry, I didn't have any previous knowledge about game development. The game was created during a global game jam. Back then, it was a little bit of a different game. It was called Hillbillies, but what we wanted to do is make a full game that was fun to play. I can't imagine myself doing any other thing than doing video games right now. I have thought about what my life would be if I hadn't entered the industry, and I cannot possibly imagine any other way. Even though it may be scary, even though you're not sure of it, if you want something, if you want to try another career, if you want to try another path, definitely try it, because if not, there's always the question, what if?
A game about out-of-control jelly seems like a perfect fit for Rogue Jam, and it certainly seemed to gel with our audience. Joining us remotely from Jalisco, Mexico is Kari Lomelí, producer on I'm Not Jelly. Welcome.
Thank you very much. My name is Karina Lomelí, and I'm the producer at One Simple Game Studio. It's an honor to be here with you all.
All right, Kari, the judges have all had their hands on I'm Not Jelly, and even if their hands are a little sticky now, they do have some questions for you. Reggie?
You know, it's interesting. When I was playing this game, my wife walked past the office, and afterwards she told me that I had this big smile on my face, and I really enjoyed playing the game. It made me smile. Going into that liquid jelly phase and then popping up felt a little Splatoon-like for me. My question for you is on the player progression, the combat scheme. How do you see evolving it to make it interesting, to make it challenging, to make me want to continue to pick up the controller and play?
We want to make a main story for the game, right? So the player can follow up this story. you're going to be able to customize and upgrade their skills, and you are going to be able to change the game tone to your taste.
How will you get players to fall in love with it? You have an amorphous blob, right? Any ideas on how to get the player to kind of connect with the jelly and really bring out a unique character?
Yes, of course. I mean, we have the main kinds of characters, combat styles like melee, range, a combination of both. And what we are trying to do for the player is to, of course, pick the character, this combat style that suits them best. And with that variation, everyone has its own unique set of skills. So I think that's a great way to make you feel this character your own.
So your game was scored super high for me on originality in terms of the theme, right? I agree with Reggie, smiled, this is awesome jelly, what is that? In your perspective, what's the most original thing from a gameplay side? So obviously this theme is super awesome and different. How do you feel the game really stands out?
So about the originality, of course, one thing that's important for us is that it's colorful. It's not like every other roguelike game out there, because what we meant to do is that you have fun playing the game. You have fun watching somebody else play the game. And of course, we're integrating a lot of gags inside the game, so it's also funny. We want them to giggle if they see something that they found interesting in.
Kari, you guys are off to such a great start. The game has so much charm. Even the enemies are a little charming, and I'm very curious about them. But everything's really small. There's just, when you kind of zoom out, you can see a lot of little moving parts. After playing through, 6 or 7 rooms, I eventually got to a boss who was maybe 3 or 4 times larger than the average enemy. And it made me think it might be interesting to play with scale. It would break up the experience a little bit, from room to room, and then, throughout a longer session of gameplay. What if a boss was so big that you really only saw his head or a tail or a foot, and it could change the gameplay pacing a little bit?
That's a really good advice. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you kindly, Kari. Now that we've learned all about I'm Not Jelly, we need some private time for our judges' opinions to congeal. We'll see you Marma later for the big reveal.
I never thought I could see something like this for I'm Not Jelly, and it was so well done that I thought they were talking about another game. I was so excited to watch it and to listen this feedback for the game that I participated in. It's awesome. It's simply just superb.
Well, what do we think, judges? Chris?
I got a lot of positives with this one, whether it was just the fun, the depth that they integrated the narrative throughout the UI. We've talked about this with some of the other games. Sometimes in these submissions it felt like an afterthought. I think here it felt very in-world.
I like the overall feel and approach, and I love the jelly concept and where that could lead the developer. I do think there needs to be more variety in the environments, but also in the attacks. When I started to play, I immediately remembered an obscure game that I loved on the Super NES. It was called Kiki Kaikai or Poki and Rocky. It got localized here, where a raccoon or a temple maiden were able to use kind of melee attacks to deflect or attack. And I got that same. It felt exactly the same. I love that, but I want to see them go beyond that and kind of really provide upgrades that make the melee combat feel a little bit more engaging.
And now that we've spread the word about I'm Not Jelly, it's time to put it back in the fridge because we're just about ready to check out our second selection from the games nominated by you, our lovely audience. Orange, you glad I didn't make another jelly joke? I just love jelly. But before we go, let's check out another game that didn't make it to the finals, but still has that competitive it factor in our Competitive Edge Spotlight segment, brought to you by Galaxy Racer. Bot Rods is an arcade racer similar to Mario Kart and Crash Team Racing. With a variety of weapon mods for your bot and in multiplayer mode, this game has the potential to give you that new competitive fix you've been looking for. Welcome back to Rogue Jam. We've already rewarded well over $500,000 in prizes to indie devs, plus a Rogue Games publishing deal, but we're not done yet. Up next, please find Misplaced. Take a look.
My name is Sohail. I was born and raised in Gorgan, a city near Caspian Sea in north of Iran. It's very much like Pacific Northwest, where is my home now. I'm representing the game Misplaced. The story of Misplaced is about a hero who finds himself in a world that doesn't belong to. Soon he starts getting clues that he is misplaced in this world. The objective for the hero is to find a way out of this world, and at the same time there's another objective for players to discover the mystery of why the hero is misplaced. We inspired this by the Legend of Zelda game series, just the look and the feel of it, but it's a lot different from what you see in Zelda. Misplaced is a Metroidvania game. It's not linear. There are many ways to play this game and finish this game. The biggest struggle I had was time. 24 hours a day is not enough for all the things I want to do. There were definitely times that I felt really down with this project. This is a long-term investment. You have to put so much time on it until you get the result out of it. Right now, as a married immigrant indie developer, basically the same, plus having bills and a mortgage to pay. Having a full-time job leaves only so much time and energy for the game projects I'm passionate about. And limited time pushed me towards managing and appreciating every minute of my life.
That was a closer look at Misplaced. Joining us now from Washington, developer Sohail Giami of Clear Sky Games. A technologist by day, Sohail and his wife comprise a two-person game design team in their spare time. Welcome to Rogue Jam.
Hi.
The judges have had hands-on time with Misplaced and have some feedback and questions. Isn't that right, Per?
Yes. Hi, nice to meet you. First of all, obviously, one look at your game and we can see what the inspiration is, and it instantly reminded me of Link's Awakening DX with its a reboot of the classic Game Boy game with an art style that I immediately fell in love with. So I was really happy to see it replicated in your game as well. But with that, I was going to ask you, like, how are you thinking about making it distinct from Zelda so that people don't look at it and go, well, that's just the same game again?
So our goal has been to inherit a stylized tone of Link's Awakening remake. We are different in gameplay and the story. It's not designed linear. And also, the basic Zelda-like attack system that you see in the demo is replaced with a more robust combo attack.
The difficulty does start off pretty high. If you think about kind of that balance and that progression, are there other elements of progression that you're thinking through? I know it was the time that you had to submit this version, not expecting it to be complete, but more just like your vision for that player progression from the start of the game and then kind of towards mid-level then end game.
So yeah, we definitely have a plan to make it a progress. Like as you make progress to the story, things get harder and you achieve more upgrades, power-ups, and tools. So yeah, everything will be balanced.
I believe that great games have something that, from an audience perspective, feels familiar, but goes in a unique and differentiated place. I'd love to hear you talk more about what makes Misplaced different. What makes it something that all of a sudden the player is going to say, wow, this is something new and not at all what I've ever done before.
The story, while fictional, it connects to the real world, which is mysterious, and with progression, it becomes more interesting. The story enables us to create unique and diverse puzzles. We have puzzles that require interactions with the world outside the game, like checking out the fictional characters, social media, or to look up a GPS coordinate number in a map application to find some clues. I can give you more examples because I already spoiled some of the puzzles.
Hearing all those things you just said about expanding and maybe they're a little bit spoilery, but like some of this kind of breaking the fourth wall kind of thing. Maybe the advice is bring some of that forward in the experience so that the player kind of knows, aha, this isn't this type of game. There's going to be some mysteries and some other elements to it down the road that's going to keep me engaged.
Sure, very good point.
Whenever I get a new Zelda game, I'm like, oh, I wonder what weapons are in there. And you get, in some of them you get to vacuum up dust, or you get to use a hook shot, and you see things in the world that make you kind of think about like, ooh, how do I overcome that? And so maybe start with that. Like if you've played every Zelda game in the world, what item did you always want in a Zelda game that they've never provided? And could you be the game that kind of like adds on to that lore and makes players experience something different?
Thanks, great advice.
All right, well, thank you so much, Sohail. We're going to send you away, but don't worry, you haven't been misplaced. We'll invite all our devs back on at the end of the show to declare a winner.
They showed a good interest into the details, into the story, and into our plan. And I really feel good about it. I think they like the project, and I think I have a good chance to win too.
Well, what do we think, judges? Do the mysteries of Misplaced mean a winner? Kim?
It's really interesting because you can tell he's a perfectionist. Like, I trust him with an investment. The way in game making I always describe it is play the game, win the game, change the game. And because he's a perfectionist, I think he's trying to make sure that this is perfect and he's drawing from a lot of inspiration. So to me, it rests on whether those answers of what he would do, what they would do with the game, actually makes it different or not.
I think, and I struggled with the name of the game. You know, part of building an audience and a community, word of mouth, of just being able to say, this is the game. Up until, he explained it at the beginning of the segment, I actually didn't know how to say the name, and I thought I was pronouncing it correctly. It's a little thing, and even looking at the font and the logos they're using, I still kind of want to say Misplaced.
This business can be a brutal business. When the community sees that what you're doing is essentially a replication of an idea that's already been done, the community can be harsh.
All right, well, after this quick break, we'll get up close and personal with our last nominee for the Audience Choice Award. But before we go, let's check out a game that didn't make it to the finals, but still has that competitive it factor in our Competitive Edge Spotlight segment, brought to you by Galaxy Racer. In Spectre, you play as two different teams, the Spectres and the Reapers. The Spectres covertly hack into the enemy's computers, while the heavily armed Reapers aim to stop them. This tactical sneak and shoot has the potential to deliver a new type of competitive fix for gamers. Welcome back to Rogue Jam. Today there's $50,000 and a shot at redemption on the line, but only for one lucky development team. Our final game of the day is called Cold Fortune. Let's get the cold, hard facts.
Hi, my name is Mark Mariso, originally from Detroit. Now I live in California, and I'm the founder of Frostware and developer for Cold Fortune. Cold Fortune is a narrative-driven survival game with action set pieces, micro and macro choice branching, and quick-time event elements, presented in a cinematic gameplay style that turns the player into the director of their own story. Originally, Cold Fortune was conceptually inspired by a dream my brother had. When we were kids, he had a dream about the two of us being alone in this kind of frozen urban landscape with these strangers. And then one day in college, I made my brother's dream into a comic book, and I thought that this could be enjoyed as a game. Cold Fortune has been a part of my life for over half my life at this point. And so I think there's too much invested in my mind for me to ever give up on it. It may change shape or form someday, who knows, but I'll never give up into, putting that passion to some sort of a form.
Between raising a newborn and working his day job as a mocap technician on James Cameron's Avatar sequels, wait, what? Joining us remotely from Torrance, California is Mark Mariso of Frostware Games. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you for having me.
Will fortune favor the cold fortune? Let's ask the judges who have had time to play to weigh in on both feedback and questions. Reggie?
The art style that you chose, it's in between something that's highly stylized, but a bit true to life, if you will. It's a very unique combination. I'd love to hear you talk about how you chose that art style.
From the beginning, I knew I wanted characters to look like characters, not real people. But I also wanted aspects of real people represented in some of their details. I wanted a different look so that it would stand out against all the other games in the genre. So, my skin texture is on that character for Deck. The lady actress who's playing Gantra, that's her face. We scanned her. So I'm hoping that people actually see that there's a little middle ground that we stay true to for this project, and people can appreciate it for how it's different.
I would recommend user testing to make sure that this vision that you're trying to execute is resonating with other people the same way that you've thought about it yourself, or it's kind of hitting. I would do that soon before you arrive at something, and then you have a whole art style plan for your game, or you have something kind of committed, because it's pretty expensive to change later on. So I would consider that now, just to make sure that it's resonating the way you want it to.
Of course, thank you.
The kind of concept behind Resident Evil's multi-angle approach went away a little bit too soon. And obviously in that game, it was born out of necessity. They couldn't have They couldn't have polygonal backgrounds and all of that. And I love the idea of using that, because there were moments in Resident Evil where I was scared because I couldn't look around the corner. Right? You have a system where you can switch angles. Can you explain a little bit like how that impacts the gameplay?
You'll be able to see or do things that you can't do in other camera angles. So for example, it's a messy environment, right? It's the end of the world. So there's things all over the floor, all over the place, like ammunition and magazines, but it's really difficult to see if you're just walking along. So you look through your cameras and they start highlighting through specific cameras. And you say, oh, there's a thing there. So we're kind of making the camera system dependent upon other camera systems and the player dependent upon those camera systems, while at the same time trying to maintain a cinematic look, keep that fear, like I don't know what's beyond that corner because I can't just run over there and turn my camera to the side to peek. It creates this new type of kind of experience with a survival game that people aren't normally used to in this day and age.
I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of the bigger obstacles you're facing while developing Cold Fortune.
So when the first thing I said to one of my devs was, I want to try to make the game first with no UI. Let's see if we can do everything purely cinematic. I want there to be no separation between the in-game cinematic movie and gameplay. That's incredibly difficult. How do we generate that cinematic look and give the player control of that, and then also, make it a game that's physically playable? That's like the biggest challenge.
For me, I have to say I had challenges with the control scheme. For me, I have to say I had challenges with the control scheme in terms of managing the movement, trying to manage the cameras, trying to manage my inventory. So, everything you're describing sounds really provocative, really interesting. Think through the control scheme in terms of how you're going to bring this to life and make it more straightforward for that player to have the experience.
I appreciate it. Yeah, great advice from everybody. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mark. Time to send you back to the green room so we can confer with the judges.
We had an idea of where the game struggles. Players were telling us where the games were struggling, and the judges were giving us fantastic feedback about where the game struggles. And so we know that our tasks are all aligned, and we know exactly how we want to address those challenges going forward.
All right, judges, what do we think? Hot or cold on Cold Fortune? Kimberly?
It was really interesting to hear his thinking. I don't know about you guys, but I was really impressed. He's trying to change the game, but I feel like some of the fundamentals, controls, doing a lot aren't quite there. So I like it more knowing what he's trying to do, but I was personally really distracted by the art style that I couldn't quite get into the game.
I was fighting the system so much that I kept asking, well, is it a good thing that we have multiple camera angles, or would I prefer one really good camera angle? Hearing him talk about it, like he clearly has a vision for this game, he clearly has skills when it comes to animation and all of that stuff, so I'm buying all of that, but it wasn't on display for me in this game in particular.
As I played this more, and I made the decision to commit time to this, as I played it more, I had more fun. And so that really drove me to say to myself, okay, why is that? Well, it's because there are inherent things in this game that are really well done and have tremendous promise.
One of these three games is about to walk away a winner, but first, let's check out one more game we think deserves a second slap shot at the spotlight and has that competitive it factor in our Competitive Edge Spotlight segment, brought to you by Galaxy Racer. Hockey Heroes is an arcade hockey role-playing party game that is paired with a new type of narrative that drives it down a more competitive route. No matter how you build your team, this game has the potential to bring back those old hockey arcade games in a new way. Well, we've come to the climax. choosing the winner of the first ever Rogue Jam Audience Award, who will be taking home 50 grand and the knowledge that the fans are genuinely hyped for their game. While the audience voted to narrow the game selections down to 3 titles, it's up to our judges to award one winner. And since Rogue boss Matt Casamassina has recused himself, our remaining judges will be addressing the developers directly. Judges, have you come to a decision?
Yes, we have.
All right, then let's bring our developers back and get down to business. Developers, are you ready?
Yep.
Kim, the floor is yours.
Kari, I'm Not Jelly just oozes visual charm, and we loved its colorful, slimy world. Plus, it's family friendly, so it can make a good starter roguelite for younger players. There's a lot of competition in the roguelite department, and I'm Not Jelly could really benefit from some varied mechanics and features to make it stand out. But with that said, it's a solid beginning for a great game about some not so solid characters.
Thank you.
So Hyle, Misplaced makes no effort to hide what it's borrowed from Zelda. And Zelda is my favorite franchise. This game is more than just a love letter to the franchise. The familiar game mechanics can still be executed poorly, but that's certainly not the case here. And Misplaced is as great to play as it is to look at. Your challenge now is figuring out how to make this into an experience that feels like something new or additive to the audience.
Thank you.
Mark, Cold Fortune is easily the most cinematic game submitted to Rogue Jam. You made a beautiful and bleak post-apocalyptic Detroit, and the story-driven take on survival games is an excellent idea. However, the judges found the camera system frustrating and distracting, and the character models seem split between cartoony and realistic. But there's no doubt that Cold Fortune is an extremely ambitious project with a ton of potential.
Thank you.
All 3 of you have created games that show a lot of potential. Clearly, they caught the attention of the audience. But it was up to us to decide which of these games deserved to win. So, the winner for the Rogue Jam Audience Choice Award and $50,000 is... Misplaced.
Wow. Thank you.
Wow. Well, congratulations, Sohail and Misplaced. Solved the puzzle of the audience choice. What's next for Misplaced, and how are you feeling right now?
Oh, whoa. This is exciting. I feel grateful about this. Winning this category not only means that we were the choice of the audience in the first stage, but now the finalist stage, being selected by the jury is like cherry on the cake. It gives us the confidence and energy even more than before to continue on we've been doing and what we started.
So, while it was up to our judges to decide the final winner from 3 finalists, you, the audience, whittled down their options from a huge selection of game submissions. Let's take a look at the stats behind the game, brought to you by NPD. With hundreds of submissions and thousands of votes from our viewers, here's a quick look at the percentages behind our top 3 selections. 15.6% of our audience voted for Misplaced, 14% voted for I'm Not Jelly, and 6% of the votes went to Cold Fortune. These stats offered Rogue Jam the insight they needed in making their final decision, and from the looks of it, it seems like our audience and the judges' decisions were completely aligned. Data insights from NPD can ensure you track trends with specific information about market changes and consumer needs, utilizing game evaluations and real-time player engagement tracking throughout your development and sales cycles. NPD is your source for data-driven growth. Well, huge thank you to the judges for taking part in Rogue Jam and for dealing with all of my puns. I know they were punishing. And of course, a big thank you to the real judges, everyone watching at home. We've seen a lot of really cool stuff from a lot of talented indie developers over the course of this show. Honestly, I wish we could give them all awards. You voted, we listened, and with any luck, you'll be playing many of these games in the not too distant future. I'm Jamin Hatfield. Happy gaming.